Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today's episode we are looking at a camera dating back to 1940. This was made in Germany during the Second World War. So this camera is 81 years old actually, and this is of course the Voigtlander Brillant, or Brilliant. It says Brilliant on it, which from what I gather is equivalent to brilliant or crystal or clear, and it's a description of the range of the viewfinder, sorry, not the rangefinder, of the viewfinder of the camera. It looks like it's a twin lens reflex, but it isn't. The top is purely just a viewer. It doesn't have any effect on the focusing or anything like that. The camera is in fact a zone focusing camera, and you would focus it by moving this scale on the front. Zoom you in there so you can see. So this scale on here gives you your distances for focusing. So you can see there's a lock on it. So that's infinity, and that's closest focusing, which I think is probably in meters. So you have to be, guess, measure, like quite a lot of cameras. But that's how you do the focusing of the camera. This lens doesn't move, doesn't do anything at all, apart from it reflects the image up into the viewfinder up here. Get that a bit more in focus. So it gives you a really bright image, and the reason that they did this is because the ground glass focusing screens at that time were very, very dull, very, very dim. And it was incredibly difficult to focus or even see the image on them. So this, and I think I've done another camera that was similar to this, the Ensign Full View, is a similar kind of camera that has this very bright viewfinder image. But yeah, it's got the normal kind of waist level finder that you find on a twin lens reflex. Some of the later models in the Brilliant range, they were proper twin lens reflexes. On the side here we have a depth of field scale. So this tells you the apertures, and this lens goes from 3.5 down to 16, and it gives you an idea of the distances that will be in focus, etc. Quite useful. It's a 75mm lens, which is the norm really for this camera. Shoots 120 film. It's a medium format camera. Interestingly, it's made out of Bakelite from 1938. They were making them out of Bakelite, which was the world's first synthetic plastic, I do believe, invented by an American in New York in 1907. Easily mouldable into a variety of shapes. It makes it lightish. It's not the lightest thing in the world, but it's certainly not heavy. So the case and the body is all made out of this Bakelite plastic. It is fragile. If you drop it, it will crack and splinter, and it's not very nice, but it's quite hard wearing, as you can see by this camera. This one is missing. There should be a Voigtlander plate across the top, and that's got lost somewhere during the last 80 odd years. Quite a common issue with these cameras. If you can find one with a proper Voigtlander sticker across the top here, that's a metal plate actually. They're the ones to go for. This one's been a little bit abused, although it has had the lens cleaned, etc. in it. To adjust the shutter speed, that's this dial around the outside. You can see someone's had this apart because the lens is slightly loose in there. So the shutter speeds go from 1 second through to a 500th of a second. It varies across the model ranges with the cameras. Some of the earlier ones only goes up to like 100th of a second. And there's a lot less choice. This is a Compor Rapide shutter, German made. To cock the shutter, you push this lever up, and that's the shutter cocked. And to fire it, you push this little lever down, or there is a connection on the side for a cable release. So let me just shut up so you can hear it. Very quiet, very discreet. Leaf shutter. No flash sync, there's no flash connections on it at all. This is 1940 we're talking about, so nothing like that. Aperture adjustment is down at the bottom, so it goes from f3.5 through the usual numbers down to f16. The shutter also has a B for bulb mode and a T for the the time mode where it will open when you click the shutter and then it will close when you click the lever again. But yeah, very nice shutter, and the glass on this is pretty clean. Like I say, 75mm, and this one has got the Voigtlander 75mm f3.5. The earlier ones were a lot slower, they were about f7 I think, the early one. On this side we have the winding mechanism. We don't have a crank unfortunately, we have this rather awkward lever to turn here which will wear the skin off your fingers and your thumbs trying to turn it. And this has a lock on it, so to advance the film you've got to move that out of the way and then it will turn. I think it's supposed to stop when it gets to a certain distance, but this side of the camera is not working very well, I don't think. Down here we have a frame counter window, and there's a button here. When you get to 12 you can push this and it will reset this back down to 1. But this section I don't think is particularly reliable. But luckily on the back this thing's missing. This was a Voigtlander logo that should have been there. You can see the Brillant in the mouldings. Quite a nice finish on it, to be honest, a sort of stipple. But yeah, it's got the view window, so you can see the rear of the backing paper. For those who haven't seen 120 film, it comes on a roll like this. And I can find the end of the tape that I put on it to keep it there now. And the film is enclosed with a backing paper, and this is obviously what's going to show on the outside. You can see it says unexposed, and then as you go through the film, that's the start of it, as you go through it has the frame numbers. So the middle ones are the ones that you'll see through that red window on the back, because it's 2 1/4 square or 6 by 6 centimetres. There are different markings for different formats. I think the top one is 645 and the bottom one I think is 6 by 7 or 6 by 9. Might be 6 by 9 actually. I don't think 6 by 7 as a format was around in the early days. I think 6 by 7 is quite a recent-ish format. Just roll this back up again because I'm going to show you how to load it in a minute. So that's medium format 120 film. On the bottom just a tripod bush and a Germany logo. A couple of little feet already moulded in. And on this side we have a little compartment. Black and white film, we're not really talking about colour, we're talking about shooting black and white film. To improve the contrast, very often cameras people in those days used a yellow filter, an orange filter and even a red filter to push the contrast of the film. Also the lenses are not particularly contrasty. Coatings in those days were not as good as they are now. So this holder's designed to hold a yellow filter and also a close-up lens that attaches over the front to give you closer focusing. And I imagine composition with that would be quite hard. You can see it's where is it made? Brunswick. But yeah, it's got this little compartment in the side. I think we've seen that before on either the Seagull or the Lubital cameras. They had this little compartment as well. Right, to open the back, you've got these 2 catches, one each side. So you just got to push those in, and then the back hinges down in the standard manner. There's your pressure plate. That is made out of metal and that is sprung to keep the film flat. The new film will go in this bottom compartment down here, be fed up. There's rollers over here, so it will roll over there, over that one, and then it will go onto the take-up spool, which will be at this side. This is the one that you're going to wind, and the pressure of the paper is designed to move this cog, and that's supposed to operate this mechanism in here, which I think needs a good clean and needs sorting out. It's another one that needs to go into the workbench for a while. This knob here will pull out. If you turn it back it will pull out of the way to allow you to get the film in, and it's got this lift out section here. So we take our roll of film This normally comes in a foil packet. This is my test film. It's totally ruined. It's only used for demonstrating how to load a camera. So the film goes in this way round, with the black part of the paper going that way. The film is on the inside. You pull this up over. Obviously as this gets dragged through, the film on that side will get dragged through as well. And then there's a whole little slot in the middle of this this spool, and you've got to feed this leader into there, fold it round, and just make sure that it's secure. Just wrap it round a couple of times just to make sure that it will actually take it. And then this slots into this compartment here. You can see there's a little notch on that side, so that sits in that notch, that sits in that side and folds back down, and then this part goes in, and that will start to turn. As you can see, as you turn that, the film will advance. Once you feel fairly happy that it's secure and flat and tight, it's important to keep medium format films tight. You can close up the back, very simple, just click it shut. And then my advice would be to wind it until you see the number 1 in this window. And you see what I mean about the lack of a crank. It's going to ruin your fingers and your thumb. It's quite awkward to wind. This thing does stop intermittently, so I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be a frame counter to make sure the correct spacing. But yeah, I'm looking for the number 1. I will see some arrows and some symbols coming up. This is Fomopan, which doesn't have the brightest of writing on the back of it. I messed this up before, so ended up at frame number 3 or something. So. I'm not seeing any numbers, but the paper is moving. There we go, we've got an arrow now, and there's another arrow. So somewhere here there will be the number 1. And we've got a lot of little dots and circles. And there's the number 1. So will it say number 1? The lights are a bit bright. That's going to be your first exposure. There's no link between the film transport and the shutter, so multiple exposures are really easy or potentially quite dangerous. So you cock the shutter, and yeah, you fire the shutter, and then you've got to remember to wind the film on. If you cock the shutter and fire it again, you've got a double exposure. Got a couple of lug straps up at the top here. I do have a case for it. This is the original lug straps. I took them off. They are leather, quite nice. The case is kind of falling apart a bit. It needs some stitch work on it on this corner. You can see it's looking a bit rough, but yeah, that's the case for it. All in all, a very nice camera, really. Quite interesting history, I suppose, being made in the Second World War, 1940, and being made of Bakelite. Not something you really come across. I always remember Bakelite from telephones when I was a kid. Most phones are made out of Bakelite. And yeah, there you go, folks. That's the camera for today. The Voigtlander Brillant, or Brillant, view camera, really, or zone focusing camera. It's not a TLR, although it does look like one. And like I say, later on in the series, I think it was the Superb, was a proper TLR where both lenses moved together and you could see the focusing inside on a screen. But yeah, this is what they were shooting with in 1940s Germany. Thank you very much for watching. Comments, questions and queries down below as usual. A like and a subscription is always welcome, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.